I'm here with George Greene, President and CEO at Water Mission, a nonprofit that builds safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions in disaster areas. This organization has the highest possible rating on Charity Navigator, which is 4 stars. George, I'm hoping that you can walk me through how your team is responding to the crisis in Europe.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks so much for highlighting the work that we're doing and the work that the other groups are doing as well. There's a huge need. Maybe first and foremost, we do disaster relief work, and so that's kind of how we're built and how we're structured, and we've responded to every major disaster over the last 20 years. And so we kind of have a unique skill set when people are displaced or people are hurting. And so as we were looking at what was going on in the Ukraine and the impact that is going to be coming, we saw that we needed to be able to mobilize and go ahead and start looking at how we were going to respond. And so last week we made the decision to go ahead and get a team into the field. And typically the way these things happen, you got to get in and understand what's going on and understand the needs, and then from that you can start to direct your program related activities. And the other thing too that's interesting is that having responded to every major disaster over the last 20 years, you start running in similar circles with other groups and other organizations. And so while I think boots on the ground starting on Friday or Saturday of last week, the conversations actually started well in advance of that. And our focus is obviously with water and sanitation. That's who we are. And we have gone into refugee settings and need areas where we go ground up with making sure that we have access to safe water and sanitation solutions flowing and available as fast as possible. And the reason that's our focus and that we're passionate about it is as we look at needs in situations like this, if you don't have the ability to establish kind of a baseline standard of health for people that are living in compromised situations, you can start to see waterborne illnesses and other things that cause huge medical related issues. So that's kind of our heart, that's our passion, and that's why we've gone ahead and mobilized and responded. Right now we've got people on the ground in Poland and Romania, and the team in Romania is back and forth in Moldova as well. My understanding is 1 million refugees have left the Ukraine at this point in time. Our immediate focus has been on serving the people that have left in those border countries. And we don't send people into open conflict areas. And so we're on the other side of the border at this point in time. We are working in close coordination with governments, military organizations, other NGOs as well. And so some of this new news that's come out around some of these safe corridors or humanitarian corridors for being able to let people out, but also to let aid in. That's also something we're looking very closely at as well, and looking at getting stuff into the Ukraine too. So, but that's kind of high level. There's a ton of unknowns still, and everything's still unfolding and developing. And so the key is flexibility and being able to understand how we're going to pivot and respond as needed.
Of course. Well, George, thank you so much for walking me through that. I mean, water is one of those things that, personally, it's easy to take for granted because it's just so abundant. But it's the cornerstone to so many different aspects of our lives. And I think you spoke to that. I'm curious, and I'm sure every situation that you're working in is quite different, but, tactically, with the folks that you have on the ground now, I mean, how are they mobilizing and how are they securing water and how are they securing, good sanitation for those people? And what are some of the challenges that surround that?
Yeah, so some of the big things that are happening are once you get boots on the ground and have the ability to connect with the other organizations, you can start looking at things like moving equipment in. Where is it going to be pre-staged, and where you're going to have security for being able to hold on to stuff before it goes out the door. In our case, we are fortunate. We've got some really strong corporate partners that have global footprints. And so we've already mobilized some of the connections we have with like international water quality testing laboratories, and also some of our partners that just have open warehouse space. Also engaging with other groups like World Food Program in order to be able to make those things happen. You really have to be face to face, and you have to be there to be able to show that you're there and you're willing to do what you say you're going to do. Outside of that, so that's kind of on the pre-staging and the coordination of efforts. Outside of that, as far as direct impact, we're also engaging with like local churches and civic clubs that are in the area we're already identifying groups that have that are on the front line and kind of in the face of all these people that are coming out, and they're actively trying to do things as well. And so we're looking at opportunities where we can come alongside groups like that and support them. This is a skill set that we are used to and that we have because we built it over the last 20 years. When you look at the individuals that are trying to help in these neighboring countries, a lot of times they're doing it because they see a need and they have big hearts and they're trying to do things, but they've never done anything like this before. And so when you start talking about mobilizing a 24/7 response, or you start looking at what does it take to keep things up and running on an ongoing basis, that's where we can come along and help as well. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's going on too, and just trying to figure out or seeing what's happening on the ground and then plugging into where the needs are.
Absolutely right. And I think that that's the illuminating thing for so many is that, everybody wants to help, but it's a matter of having those partnerships and, in a lot of ways, supporting an established international relief organization that has those deep ties, that has the knowledge. It's not their first time through this, is incredibly important and impactful. And, for those that are listening that, that they're compelled, they're motivated, they want to help, what are some of the ways that they can help you and your organization?
Yeah, certainly. So obviously the biggest bottleneck in anything that we do is resources and funding. So if there are folks that are interested in coming alongside and supporting us from a financial perspective, that certainly is an area of need and would be much appreciated. We are a faith-based organization, and we believe strongly in the power of prayer, and that's something that people can get behind as well, and not just praying for the people that are impacted, but also praying for an end to these hostilities, and praying for a miracle in the face of the just craziness that we're looking at. And then if there are connections on the ground in the impacted areas in some of these neighboring countries, those are also things that we're interested in potentially as things line up and as things come together. The ability to continue to support work in the field is dependent on labor and manpower. And so people that are familiar with that area and that are interested in getting into that area, there are some potential volunteer opportunities that are very, I'm a little hesitant to say that because we need people that have the right DNA with this kind of stuff, and also have the ability to travel. And so there are some opportunities with things like that. People can go to our website and they can find out areas where they can engage and plug in. So, but the other thing too is what's coming down the pipeline. What we're talking about on the border is relatively stable situation, all things considered. As you look at what's going on in the Ukraine, at some point when hostilities cease, there's going to be a lot of need coming out of what we're seeing. So poised and ready to respond to that as well.
Well, really appreciate all that you're doing, and appreciate you take a couple minutes out of your time to connect with me and those that are watching. And for those of you that have tuned in, I really do hope that you'll consider supporting a nonprofit like Water Mission and send some love for those who really need it right now. Thanks so much, George.
Thanks, Kevin.